Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another tutorial episode. Today we're going to be going over a really simple topic, and it probably shouldn't take very long. It's known as Ignores Targets Defense. Ignores Targets Defense is on a variety of items, and you could also potentially put it in a weapon by utilizing a jaw rune. In fact, I think any rune word or any item that is socketed with a jaw will obtain that particular effect. Now, if we take a look at items like Crescent Moon, you'll see that the Ignores Targets Defense is on the item. And what does Ignores Targets Defense mean? What exactly does it do for the character in terms of, like, your two-hit chance? As you can see, I still only have a 69% chance to hit this particular monster, and does it not work, or like what's going on? And a lot of people will unfortunately be in this scenario. You won't know what the hell Ignores Targets Defense does, and for the most part you just won't really understand the mechanics of it, and I hope to demystify it today. Now, the first thing that we're going to go over is what does Ignore Targets Defense do? So it does exactly what it states. It ignores the defense of a monster. All right. And this is very simple, but it's also sort of deceptive in a way. Because defense is not the only calculation for determining your two-hit chance. There are many different things that determine two-hit chance. First off, the most important of which is, of course, attack rating. Attack rating determines your two-hit chance by allowing you to actually make physical contact with a monster, right? Well, if the monster has no defense, then you don't technically need attack rating, all right? Number two is, of course, defense. Defense is another very important calculation in hitting a monster. If a monster has really high defense, well then guess what? You're probably not going to be able to hit him unless your attack rating is equally high. Another calculation that comes into play when hitting a monster is M level versus C level, which is monster level versus character level, okay? So if a monster is insanely high level, like say you have Uber Diablo, which is level 110, and you are only level 80, there is a huge, vast difference between his level and yours. And so you will have a mischance based off of that M level and C level difference. And finally, it's also important to note that Ignores Targets Defense, which I abbreviate ITD, Ignores Targets Defense, ITD, does not work on bosses. So ITD doesn't help you versus some of the more difficult monsters in the game. And the way that I like to usually tell people how ITD works is ITD works on trash mobs. All right? This is the easiest way to think about what ITD does. ITD is great versus trash mobs, okay? And when I say trash mobs, I mean like minions and monsters that have no names. Anything that is a champion, an elite, a named monster like Iswal, or the Smith, or Hephaesto, or Diablo, which is a boss, or a Dariel, or Duriel, or any of those things. ITD does not work on those monsters. So if you are planning to use ITD in your build, it's really important to remember that ITD is more of just like a novelty. It doesn't really help you where it matters. You can get a similar, almost better effect, honestly, than ITD by utilizing things that have negative monster defense. Negative monster defense do work on bosses, although they work at half effectiveness. So if you were to utilize something like Flesh Ripper Fanged Knife, or as you can see here, the Redeemer Mighty Scepter, which has a negative 33% target defense on it. There are a lot of items in the game that have negative targets defense, and these items that have negative targets defense will definitely come in handy for, attacking specific bosses, because it will reduce the overall defense of that boss. And I actually particularly like Flesh Ripper Fang Knife because Flesh Ripper Fang Knife has negative 50% enemy defense, and it can also be stacked with things like the inner sight from the Act 1 Rogue or the Amazon. Or you can even, like for instance, on the Flesh Ripper Fang Knife, you can socket it with another Eth rune, which brings it up to 75% negative monster defense, and it has a massive effect on the monster. There are also other skills in the game that have negative defense on them, like for instance Conviction on the Paladin, and also the Cloak of Shadows on the Assassin has negative monster defense on it, which is very, very powerful. So for instance, if you are a Conviction Paladin, like for instance this particular Paladin is, you don't necessarily need attack rating to hit monsters because the monsters have their defense basically sundered for you. And you don't really, like, my meager 2,463 attack rating is actually more than enough to hit most targets with negative 92% defense on those targets. It's pretty cool, right? In general, I find ITD to be one of those things that's nice to have, but you definitely shouldn't deliberately shoot for it. And it's really just because it only works well on trash mobs. And that's really it. It only works well on trash mobs. And if we were to go out into, like, even just somewhere like Frigid Highlands, I mean, we're talking about, like, just like the everyday ordinary garbage that you see as you run around, like, like this guy. But it's never going to work on Eldritch himself. Now, if you have another way to deal with it, and a lot of people will do this, is they will use things like Smite that are guaranteed hits. That way they don't have to worry about actually being able to hit anything other than trash mobs. And it's nice. I mean, back in the day, I used to be really super duper excited about ITD. I remember I would always want ITD on my weapons. I would look for specifically like Paladin Scepters and things that would drop with ITD. So I wouldn't have to worry about attack rating as much. But these days, as I've kind of like matured, obviously, since the old days, I've realized that ITD really isn't like the bee's knees that I thought it was. It's better to move towards something else. Now, if you did have ITD on your weapon, like, I mean, so what? I mean, just enjoy it. For those trash mobs, for the monsters that literally, don't really matter, you're going to be able to hit them guaranteed 100%, essentially, like through their defense. And if there is a level difference going on between you, there will still be a mischance. But it's not going to guarantee you a hit. Even in the situations where you're going up against the trash mobs where ITD works, the bosses and the monsters and things that you're fighting, or rather the trash monsters that you're fighting, will still have level difference between you, which will cause hit mischance. There's still a 5% mischance in attack rating innately. And then on top of that, we also have the fact that they can block your attack. They can, evade your attack, things like that. So it's, just remember that ITD is not always going to guarantee you a hit, versus even the monsters that it works on. And it's really just because attack rating is silly, and honestly, I really wish they would revise the entire attack rating, like, character panel here, because it's just garbage. The attack rating character panel does not properly relate your correct to hit percentage, and if it did, I feel like a lot of players would have a much easier time figuring out how to build their character, because when they see 91% chance here, but then when they actually go in and they fight and it's nowhere near 91% chance, things don't really work out the way that you would assume. Anyway, as always, I hope that you found this video at least a little bit interesting and useful, and as always, thanks for watching, and keep watching.